Okay, take 500. First, you download the latest version of GZ Doom and Brutal Doom, obviously. I'll put links to both of those in the comments or whatever. Extract your GZ Doom zip, and for Brutal Doom, you really just need the PK3 file. You don't need the changelog, probably. Crack open the GZ Doom directory, and you want to put in your Doom 2 WAD or any base Doom mod. To start out, you don't load up Brutal Doom because it sometimes doesn't save the settings correctly. So just fire up GZ Doom, go into your options, and then video modes. You're going to want to set it to full screen. Sometimes it takes a minute. And then select your monitor's resolution. Once that's all good, don't really need to screw with any other settings in here. So you go back and then display options. Mouse out of the way here. Let's see here. Vertical sync you want to leave off unless you get screen tearing, then you want to turn that on. Use Fuzz Effect is the first one you want to change. Go to translucent. It's mostly for invisible demons. Makes them look transparent instead of that just flat black shadow. Rocket Trails, Blood type, and Bullet Puff type, set those all to particles. I've tried it on both a bunch, and even the combined sprites and particles. I don't notice a difference at all. Particles uses up a lot less memory. Number of particles and decals you can crank up if you got a really good system. If not, just leave it default. That doesn't really change too much. Menu dim I like to turn all the way to 0. And the rest is just kind of personal preference. And back up at the top, go to OpenGL Renderer. Sector light mode, I like to turn it to standard because I find dark's a bit too dark, especially for some mods. Fog mode radial for the few maps that actually use fog. Find radial makes it a little bit foggier, it looks a little bit better. What's next here? Fuzz Style, you want to go to translucent fuzz. That gets that sweet invisible pink effect. Adjust sprite clipping on smarter. I'm not exactly sure what the difference between smart and smarter is, but I mean smarter sounds better, right? Smooth sprite edges, turn that on as well. Particle style, smooth. Rendering quality. Menu blur to 0. Don't touch stereo 3D VR. Unless you're on stereo 3D VR, otherwise you're going to have to Alt F4 to get out of the game. At least that's what happens to me. Multi-sample, turn all the way up to 32x. Tone map mode, you want to leave that alone for now. Bloom effect on, lens distortion on, ambient occlusion up to high. And everything else you can leave alone. Back up at the top to texture options. Textures enabled, yes, of course. Texture filter mode, none. Aniscopic filter up to 16x. High-res textures, yes. High-quality resize mode. I think the best is XBRZ X4. Resize on, resize sprites on, resize fonts on, precached GL textures, yes. Trim sprite edges on, sort draw list by texture. I'm not exactly sure what that does. I click yes, it seems fine. Back out of there, and then back out again. And we go down to dynamic light options. Just make sure this is all on. Light shadow maps, yes, and shadow map quality up to 1024. The next thing we want to screw with is up to HUD options, and then scaling options. Use interface scale, adapt to screen size. Messages, I like to turn that up to 3. It's kind of weird at 1080p and higher. It's really hard to see. Messages 3. You can play around with that. It's easier to see what that does when you're in game, especially if you're in co-op or something. Console is fine by default. Status bar, you want to hit left so it goes to scale to full screen. That's really handy. And HUD preserves aspect ratio on so it doesn't get kind of stretched. The status bar is your main user interface. Your HUD at the bottom of the screen there shows your health and your ammo and whatnot. You can back out of that. I don't think we need to do anything else in any of those options. Player setup, you want to just go down. I turn auto aim all the way off because I'm cool, and always run on. Other than that, just set that up however you want. Mouse options, enable mouse, yes. Cursor, I like the system cursor just because it's easier to find when you're in the menu. Overall sensitivity, I've got a high DPI mouse, so I set that all the way down. Grayscale mouse movement, seems unintuitive to leave that on. Normally in an FPS you want 1-to-1 mouse movement ratio, but Doom's a bit different. I find it's a lot better with the pre-scaling on. Everything else you want to leave default except for always mouse look. Obviously you want that on. Invert mouse if you're a freaking weirdo. And look spring and look strafe don't matter if you have mouse look on. I think that's all I need there. And the customized controls, you can just hit delete once you have one selected. You pretty much just delete this whole first section. Yep, that's good there. And then start from the top. Fire, mouse 1, secondary, mouse 2. I like having my reload on my mouse. Use open, I use F. The default's E. That's what you're used to, that's cool. W-A-S-A-D. Jump is space, crouch is control, and run is shift. That's really all you need to set, unless you play a lot of deathmatch. You might want show scoreboard. It's all just personal preference stuff. After that, I think we're good to back right out and load up Brutal Doom. So to load Brutal Doom, it's real easy. You just take your Brutal Doom PK3 and just drag it right onto the GZ Doom EXE. Easy peasy. Now you're playing Brutal Doom. A couple options you might want to set up in Brutal Doom. Performance, max wall decals. If you've got a good system, just crank that right up. Blood amount, personal preference. I like to crank it. If you got it cranked, sometimes blood will cover buttons and stuff, makes it really hard to see, so I like to turn the janitor thing on. Spent casings stay on the floor, leave that off, and water ripple effect. This is personal preference. I find it's kind of wonky sometimes, so I like to turn it off. And then everything else you leave on default except for footstep sounds. I find those are really crazy sometimes. It's not good at all, at least in the current state. Maybe with the next update they might fix it up a little bit. For now, I turn that off. I think everything else, yeah, you leave everything else by default. If I didn't screw anything up, this should look pretty good. Yeah, you can by default the plus and equals or plus and minus signs on your keyboard, you know, next to backspace and 0. That changes the size of your HUD. So if you hit minus, smaller. If you hit plus, goes up to there, and one more gets you the new GZ Doom HUD. And you get to play Doom. Yeah, I think that's it. Everything looks good. You see at the top there the messages when I picked up health and stuff. That's why you turn it up to 3. If I pause here, the messages don't stay. That's in HUD options, scaling options, messages. If I turn that up to 7 or 8, you got the pistol. See up top left there. 3 works for me. Oh, and one last thing, what's it called, the texture, whatever, tone map mode. This is kind of funky. It changes kind of the way the whole world looks. There's a bunch of different settings. I don't really understand this myself. I found the palette looks good if you're going to use any of them. It does kind of make things look a little bit weird. It's hard to notice on certain mods, especially darker gothic ones that use a lot of browns and stuff. I find it's all similar color. That can really change the look of the whole game. But for the most part, I think you're going to want to leave that off. And that's how you set up Doom. Look good. Yeah, that's about it. If you have any questions, or if you think you could do something better than I did, or you know any other tricks, feel free to leave a comment. Always remember to like and subscribe. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter, Tumblr, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Tinder, Grindr, MySpace, Google+, and my Blogspot. I'll also put links in the comments down to my Patreon, Etsy, and Amazon wishlist for feeling generous. Don't forget, you can always contact me through YouTube here, or check out my Twitch at twitch.tv/thechunks. You can always also email me or text my personal cell phone, and you can write to me in person at Chunks at 2900 West Almadia Avenue, Suite 800, Burbank, California, 91505. Thanks for watching.